Hi, everyone. So I'm seeing folks, gradually coming in, trickling in. So I think we'll give it like a minute or two for, a couple other folks to join in, and then we'll get started. Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. So hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. In case you have not interacted with me yet, hello. I'm Ella Joshi. I'm the Events and Fundraising Officer at Amicus, and we are so excited to be hosting our annual Student Awards event with three amazing speakers. Y'all are in for some real treats. But yeah, so just thank you all for coming, and thank you all for the amazing work you all have done for us over the year. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our first speaker, Anjali. So a little bit about Anjali. She won a Callister Trust Scholarship and worked with the Metro Capital Defender's Office in Atlanta, Georgia. She worked there for 3 months between December 2022 to March 2023 with the team and worked on a variety of cases for amazing clients. Currently, she is a bar student at the Inns of Court College of Advocacy and has previously worked as a criminal paralegal and president of the Middle Temple Students Association. So take it away, Anjali.
Thank you so much, Ella, and thanks so much, Amicus, for having me. I feel super lucky to be speaking alongside Sharif and Herman, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so my name is Anjali, and I'm going to be talking today about my experience in Atlanta, Georgia, with the Metro Capital Defender's Office. As Ella said, I was there between December to March, so December 2022 to March of this year. And I really want to talk about my experience in two different veins. So the first is really about the team, so the people that I worked with. And then the second thing I want to talk about is the clients that I worked with, because ultimately those two groups of people very much shaped the experience that I had. Um, so talking about the team first, as I said, I was based in the Capitol Defender's office in the middle of Atlanta. I'd never actually been to the US before, so I really didn't know what to expect, and it was such a culture shock landing in the US and yeah, getting to Atlanta. But as soon as I got to the office, I can't tell you how friendly and how lovely genuinely was there. And I think that was something that was really integral to me, finding it a really positive, great experience. It was a really big learning curve. So I'd done quite a lot of work. So I worked for 2 years as a paralegal in the UK, and in that time I've clerked cases. I've gone and spoken to clients in different areas of the justice system, whether that be in prisons, whether that be in court, whether that be in the cells. But coming over and working in the US was a real learning curve, and in particular in relation to the issue of race. So we know it's no secret that in the UK, racial bias at the bench and at the bar are big issues that we're dealing with over here. But in the US, because the clients are in the capital defenders world are possibly facing, the death penalty, the issue feels so heightened. So in the UK, there was a really great report released last year called the Racial Bias and the Bench Report, which I'd really recommend to people if they haven't read it already. And I think going to the US, it kind of made me see those issues, but just that much more amplified because of the US and because the stakes were so high with the clients being at risk of obviously the death penalty. I am a woman of colour, and going and working in the team that I was with was actually the first time I'd ever been in a legal environment that was only made up with people of colour. And for me, that was really powerful. So I feel in the UK, a lot of my experience has sometimes been fitting in or feeling somehow othered or somehow a bit awkward. And I did not feel like that at all in the US because of that dynamic. And I just have to shout out the boss of the team there. So Christian Lamar was his name. And he really openly advocated for that. And he openly had kind of a positive discrimination um, hiring process, which I think was so beneficial to the team because I think they had that familiarity with each other. But also, most importantly, I think it was really important for the clients. So we all know that people of color are overrepresented in the American justice system anyway, but also on death row, unfortunately. And I think it was so important for clients to see themselves represented in the people representing them. So that was something that I really enjoyed, and I would really love to replicate that in my practice in the UK moving forward, if that's something I could do. There were other members of the team that were so brilliant as well, and I do want to highlight a couple of them just because I think they are so brilliant and they deserve all the accolades they can get, really. So Shayla Galloway was a lawyer that I worked with, also in that office, and she is just the coolest lady. She's a mum and she's amazing at her job, and she just does it effortlessly. And she puts in loads of work, don't get me wrong, but when you see her in court, it's like she's just rocked up and she's gonna kill it and she's gonna leave. And that was just really inspiring, I think, to be around as a young female lawyer as well, um, trying to get into law and everything. So that was amazing. I think what really made that team as well stand out is that every team member really works towards a common goal of helping the clients as much as they can. So that was everybody from fact investigators to mitigation specialists to the admin team to the lawyers. Everyone genuinely really cared about the clients and was putting in their best for them. Um, there was one fact investigator called Gloria Carey that I worked with. Gloria was really cool. She was from Alabama originally, but was kind of based in Atlanta. And I think the life experience that she brought to the role was second to none. And the way that she could engage with clients and really make them feel like she was on their side and she was rooting for them was something really powerful and something that when I was with her with clients, they said they'd never had anyone like that in their corner before her. And I think the impact that she had on people's lives, the clients' lives, is something that, again, I would really want to emulate in my own practice moving forward as much as I could. They all spent hours on, case analysis, building an understanding of every aspect of mitigation that you could imagine, from the childhood of clients to their family background to their medical conditions. And I think that was really powerful to see the effort, honestly, that goes into the work that they do. At the end of my time in Atlanta, I told the team that I wanted to cook them a Sri Lankan meal. So I'm half Sri Lankan and half English. So I said, I'm going to cook a Sri Lankan meal, everyone come. But little did I know, they'd actually planned for me to have like a going away party. So it was like a really nice amalgamation of me sharing my culture with them and them being their usual really sweet selves. So that was a really lovely way for me to end my experience with them. And I think everything I learned from being with them are things that I'm going to take into not just my, professional practice, but into my life as well moving forward. And I think I'll be in touch with them for years to come. So that was really special. The next group of people that I want to talk about from my experience were obviously central to everything I was doing over there, which was the clients. It was genuinely such a privilege to work with the clients that I worked with. They were all so special, and I think my biggest takeaway was that they were people with stories and families and lives. And if that's the one thing that I would want to share with people, it would be that. I think sometimes it's very easy to see each of these people as, like a statistic or a number, and they are so much more than that. And I think that it's so important for that message to keep being shared with people, because I think that's the thing that helps people connect. Um, when I was in Atlanta, people say that there's Atlanta and then there's Georgia. So what that means, that distinction, is that Atlanta is a melting pot of all different cultures. And, for example, it was one of the epicenters of the civil rights movement in the US. Martin Luther King Jr. was born there. It's got some of the best historical black colleges in the US. So there's all these things that make Atlanta amazing and such a vibrant place to visit. And then there's Georgia, which is also beautiful, but it is a lot more conservative, some of the more rural areas of Georgia. And that's where a lot of our clients were facing cases. So on one occasion, we went for a hearing, and it was in the middle of Georgia. It was about a 3-hour drive from Atlanta. So we all got to the office pretty early, and we headed off to go to Atlanta. Oh, sorry, go to this hearing in the middle of Georgia. And we rocked up there. We got inside the courtroom, and I got to meet the client, and I got to meet their mum and their sister who had come for the hearing as well. And I sat down, and suddenly I looked around, and I realised that every single person in that courtroom, apart from the defence counsel, the defendant, and his family, were white. So that is the judge, the prosecutors, the sheriffs, the people that transported the client from prison to the court. And I think that was something that was really powerful for me. And again, going back to how prevalent race is as an issue in the US justice system, I think that really perfectly encapsulated that issue and represented that issue there. One of the things I'll never forget from that particular day was our client had been in jail for 6 years and leading up to trial. And that was the first day that he actually got to hug his mum in 6 years. So that was something for me that I'll never forget. And it was a really powerful moment. And I think it goes back to humanizing the people that we're working with and we're working for, that he's a person and he's someone's son. And I think those types of things are so important when you're doing any work in the criminal justice system, but obviously especially in the US because of how serious the outcomes could be. I just want to finish that. My advice for anyone considering a placement would be to do it. It is one of the best things genuinely that I've ever done. And I miss it even now. If I could go back now, I would. But it is also really hard work. And I think be okay with sometimes the day will be literally stood by the photocopier creating a bundle for a hearing. But ultimately, that's fine because you're doing something that contributes to the team, and that's what you need to be doing. That's what you're there for, right? So whatever you can do, just get stuck in and help. And I think that would be the biggest thing that I would do in terms of recommending people taking up a placement if they can. So that's really everything I wanted to say from me. I have been told that I'm meant to be announcing the winner of the Standout Fundraiser Awards category. I'm really excited to be announcing it, so thank you so much, guys. So this year's shortlist was the University of Cambridge, the University of Edinburgh, and King's College London. The winning group was led by the fantastic Olivia, and they raised an astonishing sum of over £400 by organising a pub quiz and a book sale. Thank you to our amazing winners, the University of Edinburgh and Olivia. Congratulations, I am so pleased for you. Thank you guys so much for having me, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your experiences. I'm sure everyone else really enjoyed hearing about them as much as I did. And congratulations to our first award winner. So our next speaker, who will also present our second award, is Sharif. So a bit about Sharif. Sharif started working on death penalty cases in Egypt in 2005 when he joined a field mission organized by the International Federation on Human Rights. Since then, he has worked tirelessly to support individuals on Egypt's death row and specialized in supporting vulnerable groups. Previously, Sharif also worked at Reprieve UK, the Egyptian Organization for Human Rights, Frontline Defenders, and was the Arabic content director for Human Rights Watch. We are so excited to have him here. He was actually also just nominated for one of our Champions of Justice awards. So I cannot wait to hear about your work. So I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much, Ella, and everybody at Amicus. It was a pleasure to be invited to talk and present the situation of the work we do on death penalty in Egypt. I am currently the Director of Programs at the Egyptian Commission for Rights and Freedoms, where I have a team that we work tirelessly on many cases of death penalty to represent the defendants. In general, what I wanted to start with is that the situation in Egypt, the human rights situation in Egypt, might be a shock to some people who are always know what do you know about Egypt is that it's the holidays and the pyramids and all the touristic stuff, and but the situation of Egypt, the human rights in Egypt is quite serious under a military dictatorship. That the regime is quite successful in whitewashing and doing a good job to present to the world that they are a democratic country, while the country is roaming with human rights violations. Death penalty in Egypt is a serious issue. Egypt is considered to be the third world the world country in the executions, preceded only by China and Iran. For example, in 2021, Egypt has witnessed over 180 executions. Most of these executions were in mass trials in political cases. These sentences, or the death penalty sentences, they come also in a package of violations, as if the death sentence is not a violation enough, but they start with mass and random arrests of defendants, followed by a period of enforced disappearance, and then torture, where the confessions being extracted under torture at state security facilities. Then the suspects will be presented to a mass trial court, where complete lack of due process and rights of legal representation. And then they receive mass sentences of death penalty, in some cases that reached over 500 sentences in one case. These cases also include children who are under the age of 18 who have been sentenced to death. But likely that most of the cases of the children we managed to get the sentence reduced at the Court of Cassation, the appeal level of the trial. These sentences is mostly politicized. Death penalty in Egypt is generally being used as a political tool for the regime to show their strong grip whenever there is a threat, whenever they feel vulnerable, especially recently the economic situation, when also terrorist attacks. They are always being followed by mass executions for the regime to show that they are in control and to absorb public anger. All of this to say in general that death penalty in Egypt is just a tool in the hands of a military dictatorship that is being used just for their political agenda. Nothing in the situation in Egypt related to the death penalty that is related to justice even if even if for those who believes in death penalty as a punishment, we at the Egyptian Commission for Rights and Freedoms, of course, we are against the death penalty completely in general, but there are different levels of perceiving the death penalty in Egypt. However, that the situation of justice in Egypt in general uh, uh, would allow innocents to be sentenced to death and executed. And we have seen over the last years many innocents have been executed for just for being an opposition or being involved in a political dilemma. We worked on many cases of vulnerable groups such as children, women, member of my religious minorities. All of these cases had we were not just that they are um, a death sentence case, but also because of the violations that's been associated with. We had many cases where there was a complete lack of legal representation of the victims, that they didn't receive any legal support, or they didn't manage to get a lawyer, or even if the lawyers have been appointed by the government or by the court to present them when they didn't do the real job of presenting. Many have been reached the level of death sentence, and some of them unfortunately got executed. We are currently also, because of the lack of transparency, there is no actual data. So we're trying our best to collect the data manually by visiting court sessions and recording the data of cases on different levels. We had a website that we tried to gather our data on. It's called EgyptDeathPenaltyIndex.com. All this is an effort of a team of my colleagues that we're trying our best in a environment that is very hostile to human rights defenders and human rights organizations in general. Up until recently, I had 4 of my colleagues been in pre-trial detention for more than 3 years. Fortunately, they've been released last year, end of last year, which was also because the regime was trying to show in advance of the COP27, the climate change conference, that there is human rights. So they started releasing human rights activists before that, but they have been in detention. They haven't even been they haven't been tried before a court even. Well, it's the situation is very gloomy, and we're trying our best. We are working from inside Egypt, most of us. We do the work on the ground, presenting the victims and presenting cases. We do also international advocacy through the UN, through the EU, through international organizations such as Amicus and Reprieve and other organizations that we work with on death penalty. We try to also use media and social media to raise awareness about death penalty in general, especially that this death penalty issue is a sensitive issue also in the culture in the Middle East, because it's related to the Islamic law. So we try to be very careful and try to approach the topic in a manner that would appeal to the majority of the public to understand how inhumane the death penalty punishment is, and how it's against any kind of justice, and it's a violation of the basic rights of to life. Well, on this sad notice, I would like to move on into a happier notice, and I will be announcing the standout event award. And I'm reading the short list now. It is the King's College London, Royal Holloway University of London, and University of Southampton. The winner is Royal Holloway University of London, and we would like to recognize the student group led by Dimitri for all their hard work organizing a series of events in particular, and is there a competition asking to which extent the capital punishment violates the Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. This competition saw over 30 participants. The student organized that their law department funded the 4 winners of the competition to attend Amicus this penalty training this autumn. Thank you and congratulations to our amazing winner, Royal Holloway University of London. Thank you.
Yay, congratulations. And Sharif, thank you so much. I mean, I learned so much. And I know it's very, I guess, bleak subject matter, but it was really, really interesting to hear. And if you have, social media for your organization, please put it in the chat. I know I'd love to follow, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to do the same. So, we can learn more. But yes, thank you so much for speaking. And now I will introduce our third speaker, Herman Lindsay. We are so excited to have him as well. So a bit about Herman. He was wrongfully convicted and sent to Florida's death row in 2006. He endured 3 years on Florida's death row until, in a unanimous verdict, the Florida Supreme Court ruled that there wasn't enough evidence to find Herman guilty of anything, much less sentence him to death, and that he did not receive a fair trial. Herman was exonerated in 2009. Now he is the executive director of Witness to Innocence, and we are so excited to have him. And I know you all are in for another great speech. So without further ado, Herman.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. I come to this Amicus program every year. I am so happy to be a part of it. I actually took the Amicus training back, I think, maybe 2-3 years ago. I took the Amicus training complete course, and it was a very, very experiencing time for me. And I utilized the skills I have learned today. I even work on death penalty cases with some attorneys, and along with Hannah Gorman at FIU College of Law. I'm gonna tell you a little bit. There's no use to me introducing myself because she did such a great job introducing. So I'm gonna just tell you a little bit about my story. Back in 1994, a crime had happened where a lady got killed during the course of a robbery at a pawn shop in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A couple of months after the crime happened, I was approached by some detective, not in the sense that I was a suspect, but in the sense that my godbrother, they felt like my godbrother was involved. So I was kind of approached like, if somebody approached your parents or someone saying they believe that you was involved in it, and ask you questions to see if you know anything or anything. So I was investigated at that level. I wasn't investigated as a suspect. 12 years went by. 12 years went by. In 2006, a new detective took over the cold case and came to ask, can he speak with me? And I spoke with him, He was asking questions about 12 years ago. And right now I'm 50 years old. So I was a little bit older. And I mean, it's very difficult to remember what you've done 3 days ago, to remember something 12 years ago that you had no involvement in is very difficult. So when I was answering the questions, I didn't give an answer. I would just say, I think that might have happened. I'm not sure, or I don't remember, and he felt like that was suspicious, and he felt like I was involved and I was being acting very suspicious. But the truth of the matter, I couldn't really remember back then. Shortly after his visit, he went and got a grand jury indictment, and in March of 2006, I was charged with first-degree premeditated murder. When they first arrested me, I felt like, I was kind of laughing about it because I'm like, got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy. And I felt like the state would wait 45 days and then turn around and, drop the charges as they usually do. But it didn't work like that. In fact, they pursued taking me to court and appointing me to attorneys. When they first appointed me to attorneys, I thought I had a dream team. I'm like, okay, so a murder case and I got 2 attorneys. I thought I was like the O.J. Simpson dream team, so I felt like I was going home. And I didn't understand that the reason they appointed me to attorneys was because they were seeking death on me. It wasn't until the attorneys actually came to visit me for the first time that I realized that they were seeking death on me. And my feelings and my emotions, my mind went like blank, like how are they seeking death on something I didn't do? And it bothered me for a while walking around, and I'm like, I couldn't believe this. But cut it short a little bit, I decided that I wasn't going to sit in jail, 2 or 3 years waiting for them to prosecute a murder case. Usually a murder case in the state of Florida usually take 2 or 3 years or more to eventually reach the level of going to trial. So I filed a demand for speedy trial, which they had to bring me to trial within 90 days. The motion was granted. The first day of trial, the state attorney came over to me and he talked to me like he knew me. And, he was like, hey, Herman, listen, my boss will get mad, but I'm willing to give you a 3-year prison term in exchange for a guilty plea of a manslaughter. I quickly said, no, I didn't do this. So we proceeded to trial. The first piece of evidence they brought towards me, presented in trial, was they placed the most gruesome picture of the victim at the crime scene on a big 60-inch projector screen, and let it sit there while the medical examiner testified to the cause of death, which is one single shot to the head, for 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours. My lawyer was objecting because he was saying that it was inflaming the jury. And that's, people looking at that gruesome picture and looking at me, they automatically they automatically draw their conclusion, before they even hear the evidence. So he said it was inflammatory. The next piece of evidence was a pawn shot slip. Back in '94, when they asked the question, have I ever been there? I told them that I had been there in that I punt my Sega game there. Sega, for those that don't know, it's like the modern day PlayStation game, so I always loved it playing video games. So I told them I punt my game there, and I told them I punted up under alias name. That had happened like 3 to 4 months before the crime even happened. They took the pawn slip and made it seem like I was there just a couple of days before casing out the place, and that I used the alias name to disguise that I had been there. But they wouldn't have never knew about that pawn slip if I wasn't have told. The next piece of evidence they used against me was the ex-wife. Apparently, they got my ex-wife to tell her, make a statement. And while she was on the stand testifying, I guess she didn't get what they pre-rehearsed her to say correct, and the state moved to impeach her. The state was arguing with her, and forgive me, but I started laughing in court because I'm like, hey, I was married to her, dude. You're not gonna win. You're not gonna win. So I was kind of amused by that because you cannot argue with this lady. And when the judge told her answer the question truthfully, or you, or I would charge you with perjury, right? And she replies, okay, I answered it truthfully. First of all, I told them I don't know anything about Herman being involved in this case. I don't know anything about Herman being a part of this case. She said only reason she gave the statement that she gave was because detective threatened her to take her kids. They was threatening her at her job. They kept harassing her, and that they told her that she'll get a $10,000 reward that she never got. The next piece of evidence was the key. I'm trying to look at time too. Was the state key witness in the primary evidence they based their case on was a guy named Mark Sims. Mark Sims testified that I was in a holding cell with him and I confessed to him about committing the crime. Now, what we couldn't bring in court was the fact that in 1994, Mark Sims was listed as the prime suspect in this case. We had a statement from Eddie Carter that stated that he told the police back in '94 that Mark Sims was walking around bragging that he killed the lady in the pawn shop in this particular case. Y'all have to forgive me because reliving this sometimes is very, very difficult. Mark Sims, throughout the investigation, also stated that he didn't know anything about this case for 12 years. After 12 years, he was doing some time for robbing pawn shops back in 1994. Him and Ronnie Lorray was co-defendants, and some other guys was co-defendants for robbing pawn shops throughout Brown County, and was serving time. The new detective made a deal with Mark Sims to cut some time off, and he decided to make up the story that, hey, I was in the holding cell with Herman, and he confessed to me. With that information I just gave you, I was convicted of first-degree felony murder, first-degree premeditated murder, first-degree felony murder. And the oddest thing about it is that nobody never said I had a gun. But in the jury instruction, we had special jury instructions that asked the question, do you believe Herman Lindsay was the gunman in this case? And they checked the box, yes. After the verdict of guilty came out, two things happened. One, I ran into Mark Sims in the hallway, escorted by officers, and I asked Mark Sims why he's lying on me. He don't even know me. He mentioned that it was payback. It's nothing personal. He got to do what he got to do to set himself free. So we tried to get a newly discovered evidence hearing on that, and it was denied. But while we was waiting for the denial, they end up putting Mark Sims in the holding cell with me and 35 other inmates. Mark Sims and I sat down, we talked, and 35 inmates and 4 officers, including the lieutenant, heard the conversation where he's saying we never had that conversation, that he don't know me. You know, he was only trying to get his time cut off. So we filed a newly discovered evidence motion, and it was denied. So I end up going to the penalty phase and losing in the penalty phase 8-4 vote and received the death sentence. In July 2009, my case came the first case in history where all 7 judges of the Florida Supreme Court judges ruled that I should never have even been convicted. Since my release, I have been educating myself because my dream is to become a mitigation specialist. I do training all the time. The problem is that not only did I did not get compensated for what happened to me. It's been 15 years and I still haven't had my rights restored. So I have to live a life like a life sentence in society of torment because every time I apply for a job or every time I try to get my license, like my private investigator license, I don't have my rights back. In the background check shows that I still have that murder. I was arrested for that murder. So I get denied when I'm trying to rent a place. I get denied for Airbnb account, health insurance. I get denied a lot. So I live a very difficult life after exoneration. One of the things I wanted to say, and I'm gonna bring this to an end because I want to I want people to be able to ask questions because we had two great speakers in front. I mean, I was on into their speaking because it's knowledgeable and especially Egypt, and I am very familiar with Georgia because I've been worked up there in cases in Georgia and Georgia is a very prejudiced counties in Georgia and hard to deal with counties in Georgia. But thanks to mitigation, I don't know if many people have realized a lot of states is forbidding to abolish the death penalty here in the United States. But thanks to mitigation work that we didn't have years and years ago, a lot of times now, instead of recommending death, the juries are actually recommending life sentence. So, we are making accomplishments in mitigation work. And I want to thank each and every one of you that's taking your time out your life, trying to help individuals such as myself that was in that situation, both those that's guilty and both those that are innocent. I want to really thank y'all and let you know that this does mean a lot to a lot of individuals because when we're on death row, we feel like we have nobody. We write out and sometimes we don't get answers back. We have attorneys and sometimes they don't want to do their jobs. So when we know that we have people that's holding them accountable and also assisting them to try to get the best for our life, that is a very blessing. And I want to thank everybody that's a part of Amicus and everybody that's doing this type of work. So moving along, I have this award I have to initiate. And this award is for the standout student group. There was 3 nominees, the University of Law, the University of Edinburgh, and King's College, London. The winner of the 3, and I'm sure this was a very hard, tough decision, is King's College, London. And we would like to recognize this student group led by lovely, how do you pronounce her name? Sruth and Sonia?
Sonia and Shruta.
Sruta, okay. Okay. You got to, I'm bad at
It's
pronouncing.
Okay.
For all their incredible work for the past academic year. They have fundraised, organized events, raise awareness of the Amicus cause. They have truly gone above and beyond for what was asked for them. And we are grateful for all their hard work. Thank you and congratulations to our amazing winners, Sutra and Simon at King's College, London.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And Herman, thank you just so much. I mean, your story is so moving. And just, really thank you for taking the time to talk to all of us. And again, congratulations to Sonia and Srutha. Congratulations to all of our winners. And we will have time for questions for Herman and also Anjali and Sharif, if you all have questions for them as well, after we have announced our final award, which will be presented by our lovely, brilliant, amazing social media officer, Eliza. In case you can't tell, I'm a big fan. But
Feelings
yeah,
mutual,
take it
Ella.
away.
Thanks so much, Ella. I am delighted to announce the Standout Social Media Award this year. The nominees were Royal Holloway, University of London, University of Oxford, and the University of Cambridge. And I am delighted to say that we have awarded this award to the University of Oxford. So congratulations to them. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here, but I want to give a huge shout out to Valentina, who has led this team so fantastically, and has been a real credit to the main team at Amicus in how well they have promoted themselves on social media. I do have a few words to read out from Valentina. So she says, starting Amicus up at Oxford this past year has truly been an irreplaceable experience, making so many students aware of easily accessible opportunities to give them experience in a field where practical experience is so limited. Creating our social media posts has been so fun and insightful to see how our messages can be most effectively communicated, and the whole experience is something I will take with me forever. Thank you so much to Amicus for this amazing experience. So there we go. I'm sure you'll all join me in congratulating all of our amazing nominees and winners today and thanking our speakers. I think we have some time for some Q&A.
Yes, very true. Congratulations to everyone. I mean, all of our nominees have been amazing. Y'all got nominated for reasons. And congratulations to our winners as well. And we are excited to now move into the Q&A portion. So in case if you haven't seen in the chat, Deanna has put, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hands and ask them yourselves, but whichever is more comfortable for you. But yeah, so ask away. Ooh, okay, in the chat, Alan has a question for Herman. Alan asked, was there ever any follow-up or accountability punishment for the threats made / reward promised to your ex-wife?
No, actually, it wasn't. Our system here in the United States are, let's try to use people or try to make things happen in a forceful way. And they don't understand the victims that they actually create. And here in the cases, a lot of victims are created through the state of Florida to get a prosecution, whether it's right or wrong, is what the prosecutor is aiming for. So no, there's no punishment for anything that happened except for me. I get punished.
Yikes. Well, thank you for answering. That is very disappointing to hear, but again, thank you for answering. And so okay, so we have a couple more questions. So first, okay, I will just go by order. I see them in the chat. So Eliza has a question for Sharif, which is, what do you find to be the biggest challenge facing your work to be currently?
The whole environment of in Egypt is quite challenging. It's doing the human rights work, even though that human rights is part of the legal the legal framework in Egypt according to the constitution. However, the court doesn't really consider that. The regime doesn't really recognize human rights and democracy in general. The main challenge is that if you are working on human rights issues inside Egypt, you are by default considered as an enemy of the state, and you are, and there is zero tolerance to that mostly. So the main risk is to be arrested, or the least that to be shut down and persecuted. So yeah, so it's just a challenge to exist in general.
Thank you. That's super insightful. It's not an area that I'm that familiar with, so thank you.
All right, so our next question is for Anjali from George. If you could go back to your first day of placement in Atlanta and give yourself 3 top tips, what would they be? Well, that's a good question.
That is a really good question. Okay, first thing would be to make it clear to everyone when you go there that you are willing to get stuck in, and that no job is too much, because I think they are also sussing you out, right? You're a new person coming into their space, and I think that they have really high pressured workloads, and I think it's important to just say, look, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. If that is that making a coffee today, I'll do that. So I think being open to doing that and making that really clear on the first day is important. Second thing I would say is to take your time to accept that you're in a new legal environment. So obviously a lot of the law and things that I was aware of in the UK wasn't applicable in the US, and being okay that it's going to take a bit of time to adjust to a new a new culture, even just legally. And the third thing is to get used to everyone being obsessed with your accent and being obsessed with your weird things that you do because you're British. So I walked to the office every day and everyone thought I was genuinely so strange for doing that, because everyone drives everywhere. So just to be ready for things like that, I guess, as well.
Very good tips, very good tips. I'm not surprised that Americans are very enamored by British accents as an American myself. My friends would always say, Ella, you know, when you move to the UK, you better come back with a British accent or don't bother coming back. So our next question is also for you, Anjali, from Sonia. So Sonia said, I missed the beginning of your talk, so just wanted to know what the best part of your Amicus placement was. You know, would you recommend doing it? And also, what was the most challenging part of your placement?
The best part, I would say, was kind of definitely working with the people that I worked with and working with the clients that I worked with, because I think that human interaction was so special and something that couldn't be replicated in another role. I always think, even now, the work I do, the client-facing stuff is always the most exciting for me. But because, as I say, it just felt so important, and it felt like you were genuinely you were working for a lifeline for them. So I would say that was the best bit. Probably the hardest bit also goes to that, because the stakes are so high, and these are people that I genuinely really care about. They're all still potentially facing the death penalty, all the clients I worked with. So I think that's probably the hardest, the emotional toll of working in that type of basis. I would say, in terms of how to deal with that, it's being open with your colleagues. So all my colleagues were really open if they were having difficult mental health days or they were finding things stressful on a certain case. I think about being frank and being open is the best way that you would kind of mitigate that. Also, though, the Amicus team based in the UK were really helpful. So they would check in with me, see how I was doing. And I think, like, be honest and say, like, if you're finding something difficult, just share it with them, because they're there for you, and they want to support you supporting the teams out in the US, right? So I would say take advantage of that as well.
Amazing. I've got to say, I can't lie and say I'm not inspired to do a placement. Also, Atlanta is such an interesting place. So we also have 2 questions for everyone. So I'll go with the first one from Deanna. So doing this work can be emotionally hard for anyone, students, lawyers, etc. Very true. As we have many people on this call that are just starting out doing this type of work, what is your advice to best look after yourself? I guess anyone can start. We would love to hear from all.
I'll start. For me, doing this work is extremely emotional because one, I have to relive it. Whether I'm in the courtroom or whether I'm on Zoom with students, I have to relive it. And then I have to deal with the executions. Doing visuals for the execution, and it's been times where I actually knew the individual, or I worked on the individual case, and the execution is moving forward. So one of the things that you must understand is that this work is very hard. And when you see something that, and I like to also note that this work is wrapped around political gain. A lot of legislators and high officials participate in this for political gain. So it's a political things. So when you see something that is damaging and hurting, the best thing to do is to think about the ones that you're still fighting for. You can't allow yourself to get depressed and go backwards. You have to take that depression, move it to the side, and you have to move forward for the ones that is in the future, so that you may not make a difference today, but you will make a difference in the long run.
I agree with all what my friend Herman here said. I've been working on death penalty for almost 20 years, and sometimes you would think that you got to the professional level, that you can deal with it professionally, and then one case that gets too personal, too close, would just break you completely. And this happened to me 2 years ago when I was working on a case of Father Isaiah. It's one of the very famous cases in Egypt. I am happy to share with you. It got very personal, and it just when he got executed, it completely broke me. My advice is that there are two things that mostly Herman mentioned also, is that you keep thinking and repeating that you are doing what you really believe in, is that there is a goal and there is a cause that you are part of, which is also saving lives. And even though that you would know that sometimes you might not succeed, but it is something that you believe in, and it's worth fighting for. The second thing is that try to learn to disconnect for a bit, maybe just spending time with friends, doing a hobby. A little bit of disconnection would help you not to burn out early, would help you last more, because there is a responsibility on you to keep continuing it, because if we keep burning out, that means that there will be no one to defend those on death row.
Yeah, I would say, I think Herman and Sheriff have really well encapsulated everything. When I was over there, I asked the team, what do you do to deal with this emotionally, because it's hard? And all of them had hobbies that they were so into, they could be professionals. So like some of them like loved the gym, and they were, that was their thing. They would go to the gym no matter what. Some loved hiking, some were into painting, some were into like arts and crafts, and all of them did that as a thing that was mindful and totally switched them off from the work they were doing. Because I think if you're someone that is so committed to working in something that is really high stakes and is really emotional and really compelling, then I think you need something that you can do to essentially take a break from it, so that you can come back better as well for your clients, right? Because like Sheriff said, if you burn out, then I think it would be hard to come back. So I think that's the kind of thing that would be really important, is to engage with something outside of the work you do, so that when you come back, you're better than ever.
Thank you all. Those are super insightful and very, very wise answers, because yeah, burnout is very real. I mean, this work is often quite grim and bleak, but using that to, I guess, fuel you, and but also disconnecting is always a great skill to practice. You know, switching off, it's a lot more difficult than it might seem. And so we have one more question for all of you. Sorry, I lost it in the chat. Wait, there it is. Okay. So this is from Jake. So this is again for everyone. In addition to helping people on death row, what else can lawyers do to help abolish the death penalty? Especially this also noting you, Sharif, you know, in Egypt where it is very dangerous to be doing this type of work. But yeah, so just love to hear.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. Is that also we try our best for our work is to be within the Egyptian legal system. So we start working on the cases even on an early stages of the trial. Once we recognize that this case is a death penalty case and the charges are death eligible, we start working on defending the suspects and start going through legal advocacy, legal representation. We start doing international advocacies through international organizations and present legal support and support also to the families. So this is something that's also would precede the reaching the level of the death being on the death row itself. We also try to do as much as we can on awareness, so trying to gain the public opinion on abolition, showing how having a punishment that is inhumane, such as death penalty, within a legal system that is completely unjust and doesn't guarantee any minimal level and standards of justice. Death penalty is actually a violation of justice and not a tool of justice or a punishment. Once an innocent person would die, that means that the whole justice system is not functioning. So we try our best in awareness and yes, yeah, more so and legal representation, which is most of our my colleagues is trained lawyers, trained on working on human rights cases in general and death penalty in specific. So yes, we do the legal representation and legal advocacy.
I agree with Sharif. Awareness is the most important thing. One of the things about it here in America, we're tilting the hat because most of our officials are elected officials. So we bring awareness not only about the death penalty, but how important it is to vote for people that believe in humanity, you know, who can value a life. And with that being said, we be able to tilt the legislation to a degree where they will entertain abolishing the death penalty. Right now, we have 3 states that we believe are in line to actually doing a memorandum or abolishing the death penalty, and that's Oklahoma, Ohio, and I think it's Arizona. I'm not sure. But it's because the legislation has changed in that area and people have voiced out that death penalty is not a deterrent for crime. We're being very successful in that.
I don't know, sorry, if you wanted me to add anything to that. I think honestly it's about getting behind organizations like Amicus. Show up, show your support. And I don't think it's just about people in law. I think that's just people in general. If you feel strongly about something, then I think you've got to try and get behind it. And I think that will be what hopefully pushes us towards having the death penalty abolished worldwide. Obviously, I know it's much more complex than that, and I think Sharif and Herman can speak to it a lot more. But I think just being a person, if you really feel that you don't agree with this, then fight for it. And I think that's why being part of Amicus as student members or whatever is a really great place to be. So yeah, hopefully we are making making strides towards that being possible.
Thank you all so much. Those are great answers, and that was a great question to conclude on. But thank you again to our incredible, all the positive adjectives I can think of in my brain speakers, all three of you. I've loved hearing from all of you, and I'm sure I can speak for everyone else when I say that we all learned a great deal from all of you. And thank you to our amazing student reps and student groups for doing all that you do to show your support for Amicus. And also Herman for Witness to Innocence. If you all have also any social media you want to promote or anything, feel free to put it in the chat. And then Sharif also put the links to a couple social media platforms in the chat as well. But I've also taken them down so we can circulate them later. But just thank you all so much. I cannot say thank you enough. Oh, great. Yes, the website to Witness to Innocence is there. Also, yes, if you would like to continue to get involved or support us, again, you can always donate as well. You know, every little bit helps, even if it's just like £2. But yes, we hope you all had a wonderful evening. And yeah, and for our three amazing speakers, have a great rest of your evening yourselves. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh wait, Deanna, do you want to stop the recording?